Here we are at our second. Can y'all hear over there? Get the wind? All right. So here we are at our second stop. This is the slave quarters that were attached and are still attached, right, to the president's mansion right behind us. And the way that the story goes is that in 1836, President Manley, who was the first president on campus, brought what were called manservants with him. Two men named Jack and Boise, who lived here in the quarters behind us. And as the campus grew and there were more, quote, servants that worked with the university, they would be housed in kind of a building that looked like this. It's a pretty typical slave quarters for the time period, the first third of the 19th century. It's a room or a house that's divided into two by a chimney that served both as a cooking resource and a heating resource. Okay, it has a double hearth inside, so it's open on both sides. And there would be probably 6 beds bunked up in threes on either side. Sometimes men and women would be separated in one house. Other times, men would be in one house, women would be on another. There was a slave quarter that's down Old Sorority Row. I guess it's still there. I mean, it's not like all the buildings have been redone just yet. But there was a women's slave quarters down there at one point on our campus as well that's been removed because of construction on campus. But so this is sort of that story. But what even precedes 1836, and I think precedes Jack and Boise's story, is the idea that you think about a state that's founded in 1819, whose state legislature is right here in Tuscaloosa. Okay, if you've ever been over to the ruins, the Capitol ruins in Capitol Park, that was the state house. The tavern that's right outside is where a lot of the wheeling and dealing of the politicians took place. That's where all the deals were brokered. And then what's now the University Club, that big, beautiful white house at the corner of Queen City and University, was the old governor's mansion. So you have to think that in 1819, a city that's founded as the state capital, that's building a flagship university in the antebellum South, had slave labor as a part of its construction, had slave labor as a part of its planning, okay, and its development. So this campus, for all intents and purposes, was built with slave hands and sweat and blood, okay, and bodies, muscle and grit and death, right, and injury and harm, social and physical harm. So the slave quarters, to me, and y'all can interpret it in any ways you'd like, but to me what it does in terms of the deconstructive is, of course, it represents that shadowy past of the university. That it survived all this time, I think, is, well, I don't know what it's a testament to, but I'm not going to question what it's a testament to as much as here it is, and we should do something with it, right? One of the things I try to do with it is to figure out what it represents as we move forward, okay? Authoring Lucy, even though she was here 3 days, I think it's kind of easy to say she's a pathfinder, she's a trailblazer. We owe it to her because she's a person. She's an animate person, right? She's active, she's got a narrative, she's got a history. And so we can kind of link ourselves to the positivity and to the light that she brings to our narrative as students and faculty, community members at the University of Alabama. Slave quarters, a little bit more difficult. I had so much trouble the first few years of this tour trying to figure out what to say other than it's a reflection of what we're not, okay? That it acts as sort of a mirror of what we're not. Lots and lots and lots of trouble with that. Until I was giving this tour in 2013, and I had a football player, and it was this class. Whenever I do this tour, I always say, oh, my rhetoric and social change class. It was our class. And he was in our class, and we were talking about all sorts of things that we do, some of which can get pretty deep, some of which can get pretty emotional, some of which can get, kind of pretty intense and controversial. You all know this from time to time. He didn't really say all that much. Big dude. I mean, he was a defensive lineman, super tall, super hegemonically masculine, hyper-masculine, didn't say all that much, kicked ass on the papers, by the way. Like the papers y'all just turned in on Tuesday that I'm grading over spring break, he aced those things like nobody's business. Just awesome. Just didn't say much. So we're doing the tour and we get to the slave quarters, and at that point in time, we could actually walk across the lawn. There wasn't a white wall here, like there wasn't a metal gate, there wasn't a card scanner, motion sensor, video camera. The campus is very protected now. I used to be able to walk a class like this across the lawn and open up the doors so you get a sense of the feel and smell, the sensory detail of what those slave quarters must have been like and still are. And they store implements, by the way, still. They store the tablecloths, tableware, flatware, etc. for when there are events in the president's mansion. So it's still a site of labor and servanthood in a lot of ways, which is kind of interesting. But we did that on this tour with this particular class in 2013. And I noticed that he was kind of standing in the back over where y'all were, around the hedge a little bit, and, kind of just distant. and I saw him crying. And you know, when you see someone crying, there could be tear stains, and you're talking about a little bit of crying, or there can be all out sobbing, red-necked, red-eared, not red-necked in a big R way, but you know what I mean, like you get blotchy. Right? And that's what he was. I mean, he was sobbing. And it was weird to see because he was a big football player, and we had just, I think we had just won the national championship. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a guy also with a lot of ethos and sort of self-confidence, right? Didn't expect to see this guy break down. He breaks down, he puts his hands on his knees sobbing to that point where you sort of like have to just brace yourself. And the nerdiness in me, like the white progressive professor who does social change in me, starts going, oh, he sees his body in the space of other black bodies of labor that came before, da, 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 da. And so, of course, that's what I posed to him. I said, I see that you're upset. I said, is it because you see yourself in the place of other black bodies, da, 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 da. And he said, well, yeah. He said, no shit. He's like, that's a given, right? He said, well, of course. He said, but what it means to me is it's such a foil, not just where we've been, but it's a foil of where we're going. And he had looked around the class, and he said, so he was paying attention to his fellow classmates, and he said, you've got black men, you've got black women, you've got white men, you've got white women, you've got Latinas, you've got Latino folks, we've got Southeast Asians, we had Eastern Asian folks in class as well. He said, we have folks of all different gender performances and sexualities. We had a few folks in there who were trans, right? And he goes, we have all this group, all this sort of diversity of people, right, in this class. And he said, to me, what it represents is where, not just where we've come or where we come, but where we're going together. He puts his arm around two white women and he goes, this is what Emmett Till was fucking freaking killed for. I was completely blown away. He's like, this is what a 14-year-old kid was dragged through the streets of a small Mississippi town for. Not even touching a white woman, whistling at a white woman. He said, we can stand here as a group and be in physical contact, to be in social contact, right, in ways that my father wouldn't have understood. My grandfather certainly wouldn't have understood. And my great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather wouldn't have understood because they would have been so incredibly abused that they couldn't even make fucking eye contact with someone who was white. And I said, dude, that's my story. Like, that narrative that you just slated out is what this can represent. It can represent moving ahead in the ways that we do together. And now you might be here just for a degree or just here for a job, but whether you are or not, you're here. In the same way that Lucy was present, we are present. And this is our community. We've got feet on the ground and we've got hearts connected with the campus, right? So we have to remember where we are and where we're going, I think, as a group of people. When he said that, the idea of a polyvocal, sort of diverse group of students, it stuck with me. And I realized this is why I personally and professionally do what I do. And it's the reason I teach the classes that I do. And I hope it's why you're interested in these topics as well. It's because there's a lot to do, but there is still hope. This wasn't all that long ago, and there's a lot to do, but look where we are.